Oh boy, it's another hang with Brooke. Welcome to my channel. This is the Amateur Cat, and I am AmCat. And today I want to talk about a topic that I think is kind of juicy. You ready? Structure. Oh yeah, structure. So a lot of schools have thought on this, right? Some will swear by it. Others find very limiting, right? It just makes it hard to be creative. Personally, I think it's important. And I think that depending on the type, every type of writing has its format, right? And so for me, I am a screenwriter. And I want to talk a little bit about Save the Cat, which is my favorite storytelling story structure. So, it's a book, folks. Boom! This is the old G. Now, I gotta tell you something. They might have even updated the cover from here because I think I bought this book. Oh, gosh, guys, when it came out. A really long time ago. Maybe not exactly when it came out, but I've had this book for over a decade. I'm going to say maybe 15 years I've had this book. So this is the cover when it came out 15 years ago, right? And you can see it was kind of like, like some basic, a book that I'm going to, if I write a book, it's going to come out and look like this, right? Very basic looking kind of a thing. In fact, look at that. Borders. Doesn't even exist anymore. Okay, back to the point. Save the Cat, right? So this book is, I think, a really important read for anybody who is writing fiction. But I think in general, one of the things that I love about this book is if you're just a person who loves the movies, this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of the underlying code that every single story is basically building on. And look, there's many different storytelling codes. A lot of people will talk about Story by Robert McKee. They'll talk about Sid Field, right? In the world of storytelling, in the world of screenwriting, those guys are some of the titans. But frankly, I think Blake Snyder here did a bang-up job when he did Save the Cat. And look, I've read a lot of these storytelling books, especially when I was in film school and trying to figure it out. Oh my God, it was just so complicated. Here's the basics. So this book, just essentially, there's a couple different, I think, major things to know about this book. The first is that Blake will tell you about the Blake Snyder beat sheet, also known as the BS2. And the BS2 essentially says there's 15 beats to every major motion picture, or every story, essentially. And he basically gives you those guideposts and says, let's just map the thing out using the beat sheet, right? And he breaks the beat sheet into other sections. For example, one of my favorite things, Act 1 and Act 3 are sibling acts, as are Act 2, Part 1, and Act 2, Part 2. Sibling acts, right? And he doesn't exactly say it that way, but he essentially explains to you that there's things that happen in those acts that tie up. Act 1 and Act 3, Act 2, Part 1, Act 2, Part 2. He talks about the pillar beats, right? There's certain pillars through each story where you actually have almost like another catalyst happen in order to get you into the next act or the next leg of the trip for your heroes or hero. Then he gives you the Save the Cat genres, which I absolutely love. And it's basically his way of breaking down stories. You may have heard, and maybe you haven't, that, really there's like 9 or 10 story types, and every story fits into one of those buckets. And so he basically just puts a new face on those genres and explains it to me in a way that's very it's very digestible. I really understand what he means when he breaks down the genres. And then he goes through and he does what I think is just signature Blake Snyder. Because an important thing to mention about this book is it's humorous. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. Which, honestly, when you're reading a how to do something book, it can be like, this is not dry, but kind of. I think that might have been some of the magic for me with the Blake Snyder books, is this thing is funny, really funny. So he goes through, and I'm skipping to the big tent poles in here. There's more in here, but you get the beats, you get the genres. Then he does a whole section on story physics. Which is basically his way of saying, here's some major mistakes that everybody makes that you don't have to, because I'm going to explain why you shouldn't. And I'm going to explain how to recognize them, which I think is brilliant. So those are the three big things that I want to talk about in this story, on top of the fact that it's just a really funny book. So I encourage you to get this. Now, Blake Snyder is no longer with us. He had a... I want to say it was like a cardiac event, something of that nature. And he left us in 2009. But this at the time turned into workshops, and it actually spawned this into a series. So not only can you get Save the Cat, but you can get Strikes Back. I got to tell you something. This book is fantastic, because this book, it doesn't make it clear, but this is about revision. And thinking about revision through the Save the Cat lens. And he gives you his own experiences working on a studio lot. Yeah, in Hollywood, working at one of the major studios. He was an on studio, in an inside writer. So he worked for, I forget which one. Anyway, doesn't matter. So he shares what that's like. He shares what it's like to just be in the writer's room in general. He shares what it's like if he is called in or hired to help another writer. He gives you a lot of insider information, but he also gives you a lot of discussion on, hey, here's the kind of attitude that does well in Hollywood, and here's the kind of attitude that doesn't. So just so you know, he talks about agents, managers, but more from the relationship point of view. Like, how can you partner with them? How can you have success? And how do you revise your story? And so, once again, Blake wrote this thing. It's really funny. And honestly, there's a sense of just gratitude in this book that this one did so well that it warranted this one. And I might also add, I believe it's in this book that Blake talks about the 5-point finale, which is epic, right? Because Act 3, actually, he broke down into a couple more sections, and I find that it's very, very insightful. From this, everybody said, oh my God, can you break down stories for us? Can you tell us, more stories broken down in the Save the Cat method? So boom, Blake did it. He said, here you go. There you go. Boom, boom, boom. Let's go to the movies. Now, here's the thing about this. I bet you there's a lot of writers right now, and I've joined some writer groups where, there's some really young folks that are screenwriters, and bravo, I love it. Let's do this. Constantly have young voices out there. I think a lot of the movies that are in this book might be just movies that aren't current for them, and so they're not as interested in this book. And frankly, I think some of them feel that way about the stories that are talked about in this book, because this book was written in the early 2000s. So the movies that were out that he was breaking down then, they're just not new, right? Same thing here. He kind of talks about some stories here. They're from the early 2000s. And then here, again, we're still in over a decade ago. This book came out afterwards. It's indie movies. I mean, to give you a feel, just older stories. We won't dive into it, but here's here's what's really cool and what's happened in a book that I absolutely love. Yeah. Jessica Brody. So I want to say before this book came out, Blake passed. And so now other writers have been carrying on the series. And now this one is by Jessica Brody, who I have to tell you is incredible. Incredible. I recommend that you go to the Writing Mastery Academy, and for $12 a month, you can join her Writers Academy, and you can learn all kinds of things about Save the Cat and just being a professional writer in general. Even if you did it for 1 month, I think you would get so much out of it. But she wrote this book, and honestly, look at it. There is a lot of information in here because look, novel folks, they're deep. Like they have a lot more words to write than us screenwriter folk, and so she really breaks it all down. What I like about this book is that she calls out layers in each of the genres that you need to think about. For example, Dude with a Problem and Monster in the House, very similar. There's a lot of things about those two that you could get confused, but she'll say, here are some of the cornerstone things that you need to be thinking about if you're writing a monster in the house, and here are the things that you need to be doing if it's a Dude with a Problem. And so she adds in some little insights into those genres that really, I think, adds a lot. I mean, essentially, this is kind of a recap of the original Save the Cat, which is really needed because she weaves in books that became movies, like The Help, Ready Player One, things like that, right? More current. So I recommend this one big time. It's not humorous, right? That's a Blake thing. But it's, I personally, I just put in an audiobook, and then I got this because I reference it constantly. Now it's like a dictionary. I just go in and I'm like, all right, let me look at this. I couldn't live without this as an actual text copy, but I bought the audiobook, and that's how I originally listened to it. Incredible, incredible. But here's the big news. Drum roll, please. I just haven't even read it yet. Yes, people. Save the Cat writes for TV. OMG. This one is by Jamie Nash. And what a cool little graphic, right? Like they just keep up in the game here. So people are carrying on. I'm really excited to read this. I will do a full separate hang and we'll crack this sucker open and I'll tell you what I think of it. But, you know, the last book on creating binge-worthy content, I just want to talk to the YouTubers really quick. Yeah, that's what we should be doing too. Binge-worthy content, right? And so if you're a moviegoer, if you're a storyteller, if you're a fiction writer, this is a great book. Well, Save the Cat is a great series, but this might be of interest. You know what? I just got it. So I can't wait to read it and tell you all about it. So that's my hang for today. Whether you are a pantser, right from the seat of your pants, no planning whatsoever, a planner, it's all mapped out, I know exactly what I'm doing, or somewhere in between, a planter, that's okay. Whatever your structure point of view is, all of this is still good. Some people, in the past, I have written from just an outline, and in other cases, I have planned it to death. I've never fully pantsed a story, but I'm not opposed to trying it because I'm a big fan of fast drafting, as you know. I'm a big fan of writers writing together. Folks, you don't have to write alone. Not anymore. And I'll talk about that. And I'm going to explore different options in different ways and give you my honest take on it, right? Right now, we are in April. Yes, April of 2020. You know what that means? It is Camp NaNoWriMo time. Yes, I have another video on that. So I would advise you check that out. And listen, I hope you're enjoying the content. If you do, like this video. If you want to come back for more, I'm going to be constantly adding to this channel. Subscribe so that you get the notification. I'm really glad you came to spend some time and to learn about Save the Cat. If you're interested in getting some of the books, I've got the links in my description. I wish you well, writers, or anyone else who's reading this that's just interested in the author's life. This is Brooke, Amateur Cat, signing off.